The next case is State v. Campbell. Each party will have 15 minutes to present an argument. The appellant may reserve up to 5 minutes for rebuttal. Counsel, how long would you like to reserve?
Let's reserve 5 minutes.
Very good. As you know, I'll be keeping track of time up here, and also you have it over there to your
Appreciate it. Thank you.
arguments are being recorded. When you present your argument again, please make sure you stay at the podium, introduce yourself, and keep your voice up so that the recording can be heard yourself. You do not use the name, or you should not use the name of a child, minor, or any victim. Make sure you use initials or a term like the victim or child that would be relevant to the particular case. We read your briefs and are ready to proceed whenever you are.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. May it please the court, I am Alan Medvick. I'm here on behalf of the defendant, appellant Leeric Campbell. Mr. Campbell has raised issues of sufficiency of the evidence and manifest weight of the evidence on this appeal. The first thing is a matter of course, I would indicate I raised an issue regarding the insufficiency of the aggravated robbery charge. I am going to concede that point based on the statutory language that it's very clear that even if property is held unlawfully, that person holding it is the owner. So I cannot reasonably argue against that robbery charge based on those grounds. I would contend regarding the tampering that there is no evidence of mens rea or prior understanding that Mr. Campbell was under investigation at the time. He got rid of the firearm at issue here, and I think that that is unsupported by the evidence presented in court, and I think the trial court erred in not granting a Rule 29 motion on that tampering with evidence charge. Regarding the manifest weight claims, I am going to rest largely on the brief here and the evidence presented. I would ask that you as the judges review the physical evidence in this, particularly the videos and the photos presented, that I think call into question the statements of the primary witnesses in this matter, that it was impossible from the angles you can see in those photos for them to have seen out and to support their claims of eyewitness evidence of Mr. Campbell committing these acts. That I would also point to the inconsistent statements of Ms. Siebert and Mr. Gump throughout the proceedings, throughout the time leading into this case, and their own statements that they had coordinated what it is they were going to say and how they were going to approach this matter. And I think that their testimony is highly suspect and is the sole evidence regarding Mr. Campbell's guilt for the offense of murder in this case. So I would ask that this court look very closely. The other witnesses presented have no direct evidence. Mr. Del Giudice states very clearly that he did not see the events at issue, but his evidence, his testimony and recollection of the events and the layout of the room and where people were, again, works against the statements of Ms. Siebert and Mr. Gump and calls that into question. And everyone else presented here obviously is government experts, or government actors, police or experts, filling in important aspects of this case, but the issue here is did Mr. Campbell shoot the victim in this case? And the only evidence for that is the statements of Ms. Siebert and Mr. Gump, and those statements are highly suspect regarding the inconsistencies in their statements and the open statements of coordinating their statements, and the fact that the physical evidence undermines their ability to actually present, to have seen what they claim to have seen. With that, I would rest on my brief if there are no other questions.
Seeing none, thank you, counsel.
Thank you. I will hold for rebuttal.
May it please the court, Heaven DiMartino on behalf of the state of Ohio, the appellee, we are asking that this court affirm Mr. Campbell's convictions. There is no dispute that the victim died of a gunshot wound on February 15, 2021 outside the home of Ms. Siebert Seifert and Mr. Gump, who were friends of the decedent. There's no dispute in the record that Mr. Campbell was at that location. Mr. Campbell acknowledged that he had a gun, that he was at that location. There are text messages in the record that indicate that he had a gun and that it jammed. Ms. Seifert testified that the decedent came to the house excited that he had approximately $400. When Mr. Campbell arrived, the victim ran upstairs to hide. Ms. Seifert testified that Mr. Campbell pulled the victim out of the residence through the window, that the victim was begging for his life, saying that he had his money. And then she saw the defendant shoot and kill DB, and then he fled. Another resident of the home, Mr. Gump, testified that when the victim arrived, he was excited because he had hit a lick, which is a robbery, stating that he took approximately $450 from Mr. Campbell. He made a statement that he was probably going to die that day. When Mr. Campbell arrived, he said the same thing, that Mr. Campbell shot the victim. Law enforcement testified that Mr. Campbell's phone placed him near the residence, and that there were text messages acknowledging that he had a gun, although he claims that it jammed. So his version of events at trial was basically, I was there and I had a gun, but somebody else must have killed him in the interim. The evidence to support the aggravated robbery was this back and forth that was going on between the victim that supposedly purchased something from Mr. Campbell. He didn't get it, so he went to get his money back, and then Mr. Campbell returned with a gun and an accomplice with the gun to get that money back. The decedent's statements that I have your money, please don't kill me, support that this was a robbery. The tampering evidence, Mr. Campbell does not dispute in his brief that when he was interviewed, he told the police that he had a gun and that he had got rid of the gun. To show the tampering, the state only has to show that the defendant knew that an investigation was likely to be instituted. Anyone who commits a murder would know that an investigation into a murder is likely to be instituted. Therefore, there's sufficient evidence to support the mens rea for the tampering. And with regard to the aggravated murder, there were convictions for both kidnapping and aggravated robbery, which are the predicate offenses for the aggravated murder in this case. The state disputes that the evidence is inconsistent with the witness's ability to see what they said they saw. That was for the trier of fact to determine, and they found that the witnesses were credible, that the evidence of the layout of the home supported what they stated that they saw. The inconsistencies in the testimony of Seifert and Gump led to the reasons why they didn't, first of all, identify that the shooter was Mr. Campbell. They said they were afraid. And Mr. Gump acknowledged that he initially did not tell the police that Campbell had come into the home and then pulled Mr. Campbell out. That would only go to the kidnapping, and it wouldn't go to the other charges. And they did explain and acknowledge the reason they gave that inconsistent statement to the police as opposed to what they gave at trial. And the reconciliation of those small inconsistencies are within the purview of the jury. If there are no questions, I will rest on my and ask that this court affirm.
Seeing none, thank you.
Just very briefly, again, I would ask you to look at the physical evidence and body cam videos in these matters, because while it is within the purview of the jury to decide the credibility of the witnesses, they don't get to decide what is reality. And I think when you look at those videos, you will probably see that the statements of Ms. Seibert and Mr. Gump are inconsistent with where the blackout curtains were, what could have been seen from the windows of that house, and how they reached this conclusion. The jury lost its way in this matter, and the statements, the small inconsistencies of Mr. Seibert, Ms. Seibert, and Mr. Gump are statements of abject denial of the facts that they later testified to at trial, and statements of coordinating their witness their testimony before approaching the police. Mr. Campbell himself, when he turned himself in, was subject to a lengthy police interview. Then those police interviews are specifically designed to elicit confession. And the detective at issue under cross-examination testified that he was using those specific techniques to try to get a confession from Mr. Campbell. That confession never came forward. The only person with consistent testimony throughout this case has been Mr. Campbell. So again, I would ask this court to find that the evidence presented was against the manifest way of the evidence and return this matter for further trial proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The court will take the matter under advisement and issue a decision in due course. The clerk of the court will mail a copy of that decision to you upon the day of its release, and also the same will be posted on the High Supreme Court website. Back to the court, I'd like to thank both of you for your presentations today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.